Yo, yo, yo! Hello guys, GhazzyTV here with another Path of Exile video, and in this one I'm going to talk about a little bit of a TLDR recap, a couple of things that I took out that stood out the most for me when it comes to 3.19 reveal, as well as the patch notes. So I've been a good boy and I made a little bit of a notepad list of things, and I wanted to talk about the actual approach of Exilecon 2 first. Now, Exilecon 2 is going to be in end of July 2023, and I'm actually mega excited about the approach that they're taking with this. I was there on Exilecon, the first one they had, and had the greatest of time. Obviously, I'm going to check with GGG, the plan is with the different panels they're going to planning on hosting, if there's something that I could actually be potentially participating in. Like the last time I was there, I hosted the build creation panel at Exilecon. I would love to go there. The problem is that I live in Sweden, which is literally the opposite side of the fucking world. So like a plane ticket to go there is like $2,000 freaking dollars, and that's not even business class, and I'm a big fucking boy. So yeah, flying there last time was pretty fucking painful. So with that said, I'll be looking into how much it's going to cost for me to get there, and we'll see. I do really want to go, but it is a very big investment to take that trip down there. Not to mention that I have my fiance that might want to follow or join as well, and suddenly all the cost just goes double up. But I'll be looking into it, and if I go, I'll obviously be streaming from there. Anyways, we're going to move on and talk about the reveal. So that's the Exilecon 2, and I'm super excited about it. However, I want to talk about a couple of things, and we're going to start off with the Beyond rework. So I'll be utilizing the patch notes for it, and then basically go to Beyond as I'm talking about this, for those of you who want to read the patch notes sequence as I'm doing this. So basically, the points I'm taking out for the Beyond rework was very straightforward. Essentially, they are nerfing Headhunter with the reductions of rares, and that's just crazy to see to me because of how often they don't want to nerf the Headhunter. But it is significantly getting hit across the board when it comes to the game and the changes they're making across the board of all the mechanics by reducing the amount of rare enemies that we are encountering. So it's definitely going to hurt the Headhunter approach. And honestly, I've used Headhunter twice, maybe 3 times over the last 8 years, or ever since they introduced the Headhunter belt. And honestly, I'm not too fussed about it, but I know some people are. They are reintroducing Beyond in the way where they are turning away all of the Beyond monsters, all of the Beyond uniques. They're taken away and replaced with Scourge monsters. Now, Scourge monsters will be there, Scourge bosses will be there, and they're reducing the amount of monsters we're actually spawning through a variety of different ways. Most notably, what will happen when you have a Beyond in your map is that you will have a small chance of spawning a Scourge boss. And every time you do this, you will have an increased chance of spawning a boss, and at any given time, if you spawn a Scourge boss, you will stop spawning these Beyond monsters, or Scourge monsters as they are now, entirely after spawning the actual boss. So essentially what Beyond will become is you trying to get a boss out of the map, and if you get the boss, you're not going to get any more monsters out of this, which will obviously mean that you get less experience and less drops compared to before. Speaking of drops, the Scourge monsters will have their tainted currency reintroduced due to this, which means that we'll be able to have tainted jewelers, tainted fusings, for example, so we can actually craft on corrupted gear, which was very popular back in the Scourge League. Another thing is that we used to abuse a clever use of game mechanics, or I would even go as far as call it an exploit when it comes to summoning specters, allowing us to duel someone from a standard league character into Solo Self on Hardcore or the current league, to bring us specters, even though we didn't have access to them, such as Scourge League specters. Now, since Beyond is taken away and Scourge monsters are taking their place, we won't need to do this anymore because the Scourge monster will be available in the actual league. Other than this, it's just the limitation of the Beyond monsters, as once the boss is spawned, you won't be able to spawn more Beyond. And I'm just going to move on to the next topic, which is the harvest changes. So what's really cool with the harvest changes is that they are basically making it so we don't get crafts. We will have the Horde crafting station in our hideout, which will have set amount of crafts, or set crafts that you can use indefinitely, but you will have to pay a sort of life force. this life force is dropped from doing crops as you're doing harvest encounters in your maps. And if you are encountering tier 4 seeds, which is supposed to be more frequently encountered, they will have the chance of giving you access to Oshabi, which has a chance of dropping a special life force, which is supposed to be used as a currency to use the bigger or more harder or more expensive crafts from the Hoarded Crafting Station. Problem with the patch notes obviously is that we didn't get any list or any information about which type of crafts will be in the Hoarded Crafting Station, other than some hints on what is going to be changed, such as the Exalt crafts is supposed to be a remove modifier before the Exalt is happening. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what they're actually going to do and which crafts are going to still be there. And I think that no matter how they nerf the available crafts from Harvest, I do firmly believe that I fucking hate the change. But at the same time, I actually love it. I think it's going to be much easier, no dependency on third-party programs or groups such as TFT, which has provided a very useful tool for us for a long time. But most importantly, this change is directly catering to the casual, new and newer players, and that is something that I'm very vocal about, that I think the GGG should do more. And I firmly believe that this specific change really helps cater to those type of players. So I'm actually very happy about the change, even though it might hurt the type of endgame crafting that I tend to enjoy doing myself. I think this is the best choice for the longevity of the game myself. The next part I have in my little list here is Archnemesis modifiers. And the Archnemesis modifiers is basically not so much outside of the fact that you'll encounter one rare modifier during the campaign, and in maps you're going to start encountering 2, 3, sometimes very rarely 4 Archnemesis modifier rares. However, again, with the limitations on reducing the amount of rares you'll encounter across the board, which they are compensating by doubling down on the rewards for the rare, so that a very hard rare will be worth more currency. You'll actually have a be properly rewarded for defeating it. It still will be a nerf directly to Headhunter, like I mentioned earlier. Now, I don't care too much about that, but I know some people do, and I should mention that. That's why I bring that up in the list. I do also believe that it will be better for the longevity of this game with these changes. I'm actually very happy about it. So when it comes to the Minion stuff that I know a lot of people have been waiting for me to tackle, it's very hard to determine how this is going to be until I can start filling around once PUB gets a quick update. So in the coming days on stream and YouTube, I'll be doing very much tests and things with these things. Problem is that they did not touch Aegis Aurora, was completely untouched in the patch notes, which means that the minion gear changes is in many cases a direct nerf on the higher end minion builds, because of the layers of defense that has become a necessity for the higher end game aspirational content, which forces us into using an Aegis Aurora, especially if it's unnerfed. Means that we won't have access to comfortably use a minion related shield. And just because we have available modifiers on rings to roll for minions, that doesn't mean that we magically don't need resistances, attributes, life, energy, shield, evasion, armor. All of these stats are still going to be a necessity for our characters. Now we're going to need that on top of minion related stats, but also the fact that minions are normally very socket starved, and the implicit modifier on the bone rings is a minion resistance ring, is kind of a slap in the fucking face. Besides this, when it comes to minion gear and the patch notes, obviously they made a lot of changes to the mirror helmet. Before I know what the big mirror item will be for minions, I'm pretty sure that we're going to need to finalize some PUBs, playing around, probably with looking into voice animate weapons, seeing what happens there and where we're going to slot in our weapons. I'm pretty sure we're still going to go with the helmet, because we still have access to the approach of crit, still have access to essence modifiers, still have access to level of gems, which is global, still have access to mini damage, still have access to hypothermia, and all of those modifiers as well, which still should make the helmet the best choice to put them in for the higher end. But it definitely does alleviate some pressure for the medium budget minion builds, which might still want to put them in their chest and using a +2 global helmet. I'll get back to you guys on that when I have more actual information and some proof to back up my numbers on, to give you guys accurate information. Outside of that, there are some new skills in the game, such as Galvanic Field, Lightning Conduit, Overcharge, Alchemist, and Mark. Now, these skills are all shock related and lightning oriented or themed. Personally, I felt that they were all very lackluster in the way they looked. They felt more like utility options in builds that don't really care about it. I also believe that they looked pretty cool, some of them. I'm just not confident or sold that they will be good enough to be used. I'm happy to be proven wrong on this though, so I'm very excited to see what other people are doing with these, but I can tell you this right now, I am not interested in looking into these abilities in the early stage of the league, but will definitely be looking into them a couple weeks into the league myself, or maybe a month into the league. But in the start of it, they didn't seem interesting enough for me to actually bother looking into. So I'm very excited to see what other people that find them fun or cool to be playing around with it, but that will not be me. So the League Mechanic, where do I see that? Kalandra, the Kalandra Challenge League. There's no direct information other than this here. Basically, the Lake of Kalandra League Mechanic, Jesus Christ, felt to me much like a Synthesis 2.0 but simplified, which I'm actually very excited about. Synthesis was, in my opinion, one of the most in-depth and most entertaining leagues to go through if you exclude the first 3 to 4 weeks of complete shit show balance issues. And I felt that Synthesis required a lot more time to be fully enjoyed. I feel like, based on what we've seen in the reveal, that the Lake of Kalandra League Mechanic takes the idea of Synthesis and makes it much more simple, and I'm very, very excited. The ring and jewelry crafts, where you can actually Lake of Kalandra mirror your own jewelry to create a shift of the modifiers, to some are going to be negative and some are going to be positive, and get a copy that you can choose one of where the other one has the opposite of the modifiers being positive versus negative. It's going to be really cool, and to me this screams the idea of one of the builds that I believe that will be meta for minions, which is the Absolution build for Doriani's prototype, which requires you or wants you to push down your negative lightning rest excessively. Will be very cool to do in a league like this that allows you to get stupid amount of negative lightning rest without going the route where you're going for melding, Malachi's Artifice, Thread of Hopes, all of these things that gives you negative generic resistances, because of the fact that this new league mechanic can allow you to get massive negative specifically only for lightning resistances. So I'm very excited to see what Doriani's prototype will actually take. We might see some non-absolution builds utilize this as well. Besides this, they made a pretty big overhaul on the Trickster, and the Trickster is actually looking pretty goddamn cool. Like, actually pretty goddamn cool. I'm very excited to see how this works. We have a better image here, thanks to H, I think it was, who linked this. This is the new Trickster approach. The only thing that I felt was a little bit disappointing, I guess, was the very generic polymath. It gives you 3% more damage for each different type of mastery you've allocated, and also giving you recovery of life, energy, shield, mana 1% per for each type of different mastery that you've allocated. Outside of this, I think that the Heartstopper is okay, but then you have the modifier that, for example, Swift Killer is kind of a generic charge duration but +2 maximum frenzy charges. You have the good nodes such as Soul Drinker is essentially the Overleech from Slayer but for energy shield, which I'm extremely excited for. Gives you increased attack and cast speed whilst you're leeching, 2% damage leech, not just spell, but all damage, and then having energy shield leech effect are not removed when full energy shield. And then you have the crazy nodes such as Spellbreaker, allowing you to get 20% chance of spell suppression, prevent 10% additional spell suppression damage while on full energy shield, 50% chance for energy shield recharge to start when you suppress spell damage. And the cool thing with this is that you can combine this with something like Wicked Ward, which means that even if you're taking damage after the energy shield recharge has started, you will actually be consistently recharging your energy shield for the next coming 4 seconds. And then you have the Escape Artist, which hasn't changed, which is the 5 evasion per 1% energy shield on your helmet and 1 energy shield for every 6 evasion on your body armor. So I think this Trickster is very likely looking pretty cool. One of the cool notes I haven't mentioned so far is the 1 step ahead, which is making your action speed at least 108% of base value, which will prevent you from being frozen by this node. And also nearby enemies monster attack speed, action speed is at most 92% of the base, which is a very nice defensive layer as well. I think this is a generic, very cool thing to add for the Trickster as well. I love the idea of this Ascendancy. It's going to be very fun to see what we can play with it. I'm definitely going to be making some builds around it and POB play with this during the coming days leading up to the league launch. Outside of this, we had a stupidly long list of new unique items, which is just absolutely hilarious. Let's see if I can find the list.
Appreciate all you do.
Thanks so much, Big Jeffrey Jones, for the sub, man. I appreciate that a lot, dude. So the unique items that I'm going to talk about, there is over 100 unique items, right, that were changed or updated. I do want to say this, a lot of them felt like they're turning Alk Shard Uniques into still Alk Shard Uniques with a niche corner of the people that might want to use them. But this was not the case for some of these changes. I did feel that some of them felt rather dull, but this is again my personal opinion. Felt that some of them were kind of irrelevant. But a lot of the changes were either detrimental to some degree, and some changes were just absolutely crazy. So first off, I'm going to talk about the Alberns's Warpath because everyone's going to ask me about this. The Alberns's Warpath unique boots no longer has plus number of skeletons, instead now causes your skeleton warriors to be permanent minions and adds chaos rest, which is higher in 25 movement speed instead of 20. Now, if they are permanent, it is very likely that they will work with convocation. The biggest problem with skeletons is that they are squishy. One of our solutions to this is to have Blessed Rebirth Cluster Jewel that makes them immune to dying or damage for the 4 seconds after being summoned, which means that we might still have to do that even if they're convocationable. It still means that they will be squishy. Not to mention the fact that if this only works on the warrior version, they will be rather slow, and I do believe that the only build that would want to care about using these would potentially be the Iron Mass Sword. So potentially a build that uses this could look into running the Alberns's Warpath, but outside of that, to me, this felt like kind of so-so. I'm not too excited. It sounded better than it is. Outside of that, my next item in the list is going to be a lot of minion focus on this, since there's a lot of people asking me about this. Clay Shaper is adding a stupid, and when I say stupid, I mean absolutely ridiculous amount of extra damage for your golems on top of adding an extra golem. Previously, it was 5 to 8 up to 12 to 16 additional physical damage. But now it's giving golems specifically 96 to 120, 132 to 160 added physical damage, which is, I think I got the numbers down to equivalent to a level 15 carrying golem has this damage. And the cool thing with Clay Shaper is that the Clay Shaper itself is used at level 41, and I think that, what was it, level 15 or something, carrying golem is a much higher level. But most importantly, you actually get plus extra golem from this, and you can dual wield these bad boys. It's so crazy the amount of damage that we can get out of this. Another thing I wanted to mention that might have gone under the radar is the Joffrey's Crest, which is no longer giving you plus level stock of the gems. And the Summon Holy Relic have 25% reduced cooldown recovery rate is no longer there. This is an old modifier, and the reduced cooldown recovery is actually bad for them. You want to have increased cooldown recovery rate, which means that the removal of this modifier...
Did you know that can save you 18 skill points?
The reduced modifier of this is actually a significant buff. It's not, well, not a significant buff, but it is definitely a buff to the Holy Relic damage output, which means that it's a small buff to them. Not a big one, but it still should be mentioned. Learcast is now getting completely different changes compared to how we've seen it before, with a lot of different approaches in how we tackle low-budget Animate Guardian. Now, we had some problems with the Victorious Flight, where they're in a situation where they basically gutted it from the low-budget AEG setup. However, they kind of compensated that with the Learcast approach. So the Learcast approach is in a situation where you're taking, the reduced damage dealt is about 5% lower than before. They gave it significantly more life than before, and also mana. But most importantly, you and nearby allies deals 50% increased damage instead of 15, which is insane. So it's a big buff to them. Another thing that I wanted to mention when it comes to this list is actually the Spectral Wolves for Law of the Wilds. They say that summon Spectral Wolves from the Law of the Wilds unique claw now attack faster, which is really good for us to get that information. So thank you so much for that. So anyways, I reached out to GHAZZY about this to get the confirmation of what they're actually meaning with this. And basically, I was told that it's not actually a % attack speed increase. They no longer have the behavior of randomly pausing when attacking. This is a problem that a lot of different monsters and minions have in the game, where they just stop attacking all of a sudden and then start attacking again, and then they stop attacking and then they start attacking again. And apparently they found the issue for the Law of the Wild Spectral Wolves that is apparently fixing that specific issue. Outside of this, we have a reverberation rod. I'm sorry for this video being so long, because this is actually freaking crazy with how long this video is, because the list of mods, the list of this patch notes was crazy big. Reverberation Rod now gets socketed support gem. Socketed gems are supported by level 10 control instructions and level 10 Arcane Surge, which means that it is still keeping the spell echo and the +2, which means that this could be a pseudo 5 or 6, or sorry, pseudo 6 link, or even a 7 if you want to count this as a level 3 in power, which is absolutely crazy how big the Reverberation Rod is. So this is one of those changes to these uniques that is not irrelevant, it's not detrimental, it's just crazy how good it is. It's an insanely big change. And the last couple of things I want to talk about, I want to try to keep this video short, so I'm going to speed through it. It's basically the Seismic trap. Basically, what happened to Seismic Trap is that they lowered the damage with approximately 30% less damage at all gem levels, which means that it was already just below the efficiency of the Eye of Winter Miner build. I know Path of Math is going to be looking into this one very extensively, and if he doesn't make a written guide on his build, I've offered him to make the written guide for him. So if that's the case, I will create the written build guide for that build for him, and you guys will be able to check that out before the league launches. So basically, Seismic Trap nerfs should still make it pretty okay for hardcore, because it's very tanky with a poison approach to it, but Eye of Winter seems to be the new kind of meta build to use for league starting boss rushing, and it's just absolutely crazy with the efficiency that that brings to the table. Now, if we look at the GHAZZY jewels, they are being buffed with additional damage modifiers, buffed by about 50% of all tiers. Prefix modifiers that grants minion life regeneration is buffed by 100% for all tiers. And they removed the attack cast with hybrid modifiers and added 3 suffixes that roll on gas jewel that grants minion chance to poison, bleed, and ignite. So there's a lot of changes to that, but it will obviously come with the opportunity cost of them being gated behind gear pieces, which they weren't before. So definitely going to be one of those things that's going to make gearing for minion builds actually come with a more cost of a higher price tag, essentially to compensate for the lack of damage they got from the nerfs. Last thing I wanted to talk about in this video is actually the changes on the economy. They are actually making so that the divine orbs are the ones that gets the being used for certain meta crafts and whatnot from the bench craft, presenting us with a situation where divine orbs will be used more than exalted orbs for those situations, well, more at least than before. The other problem with this is that the recipe for the vendors to sell a 6-link item to get a divine orb no longer exists. Instead, you get 20 fusings. This means that divine orbs will be, which is what they wanted from the start, equal value of exalted orbs. The big question we have here is, are people going to start charging for divine orbs instead of exalted orbs because of this change? And it's going to be very interesting to follow the market, what happens here, because if the league has a high pressure on crafting with meta crafts, that means that divine orbs will be more sought after than exalted orbs, and that will very likely turn into a situation where people will actually use divine orbs as their baseline pricing instead of exalted orbs. However, if people are too used to using the exalted orbs and they're in a situation where the exalteds are the currency that we use the most for certain crafts, then exalted orbs will remain the main high value currency or to trade. But it's going to be very interesting to follow that market. Again, I'm prolonging this video by just going on and on and on. Hope you guys followed, even though I was speeding through the video. Keep in mind, boys, we have like 31% or something people that are subscribed to this channel. So if you've watched this long, I'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, because that really helps the algorithm of the channel and supports the channel a lot. So thank you so much for doing so. Don't forget the like button as well when you're at it. And let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the changes incoming for the 3.19. Stay tuned for more. We have a lot of content coming up and new build guides and updating all of the build guides, which are also linked in the descriptions below. Until next time, boys, as always, stay safe and keep rocking. Oh, fuck me, dude. My voice.